going to talk about how the four elements of fire, earth, air, and water relate to each other through the three behaviors: cardinal, fixed, and mutable. So as I said in the first video, when you take the four elements and you take the three dispositions, you're going to get 12 pieces of a pie. And astrologers have found this way of separating the sky around the earth into 12 segments. And in each of those 12 segments, there's a constellation that is loosely related to that segment of the sky. And not all of the constellations will fit perfectly into that piece, but it doesn't really matter because from our Earth's perspective, we're really experiencing our cycles through moon cycles. We're experiencing through the months and through the equinoxes and solstices. So there is a way for us to very cleanly create these 12 segments through a year's cycles, season cycles. And I am very much based in an Earth experience of astrology, and so I have a little bit of a drawing here to explain to you how I understand how the zodiac relates to the Earth and our experience being human beings on the Earth. So as I said before, Aries is considered the first sign of the zodiac, and I agree with that because Aries is the first time of the year between the end of March, early April, that we start seeing life come back to the earth. We start seeing those seeds. Well, we don't see the seeds, but underneath the ground, the seeds work very, very hard. They use a lot of cardinal fire energy to burst through their seed pods, to make their way through the soil and find their way to the surface of the earth, so that we can say, aha, my plants have grown. Look, it's my basil. And so immediately when those seeds pop up, we have a tendency to name them. Look at that, it's a basil. I planted it there and it came up, it grew. And that is what I have illustrated here for Aries and the first house. We have this little seed just busting through the surface of the earth. Not unlike the way that a mother goes through labor to bring her baby into the earth. It takes a lot of cardinal fire to push a baby into the earth. And as soon as that baby's born, we hold it up and we say, it's a girl, and her name is Megan. And we know all of these things about Megan based on the environment she was born into. And that is how we think about the first house as well. We look at the first house to discover what the person is about in this lifetime. More specifically, what their soul's identity is in this lifetime. So, moving on from the cardinal fire or coming into the earth, we move into fixed earth. And this is categorized by Taurus. Taurus is the time of the season in the middle of spring when all of the plants are beginning their rooting process. They're absorbing sunlight, they're absorbing water, they're receiving, and they're getting acquainted with the environment of the earth, and they're deciding what they need to survive. So a plant will need sunlight, water, certain temperatures, a certain amount of light to grow, and so all of these things are very much what the plant needs to survive on the earth. And humans are like that too. Humans very quickly have to decide what they need to live here. On a very literal sense, the baby knows it needs warmth, it needs milk, it needs a little bit of shelter, it needs touch, and these are literal things it needs. In astrology, we looked at the second house to see what the soul needs to be nourished, what the soul needs to flourish and grow and develop in this lifetime. And those things are fixed. They're not usually something that changes over the soul's lifetime. So after we kind of get an idea of what is needed and we decide that we're going to continue our growth, that it's safe to be here because the things that we need are present, we move into Gemini energy, and this is mutable air. Mutable signs happen at the time of the season when the season changes. So Geminis, when we see the season change from spring to summer, and it's signified, I use this arrow as a symbol of cardinal, This is where we pull the arrow back to decide where we're going to let it go. Fixed is when that arrow is flying through. And mutable is when we hit the target or we begin the new process. The ending point of that cycle is over. Gemini specifically in plant development is when the two leaves finally come into two. And in human development, I think of Gemini as the time when the brain separates into two hemispheres. When a baby is born, right after it's born and while it's in the stomach even, it believes it's part of its mother. It believes it's part of its environment. It feels one with everything. And even when it's getting its needs met, it's starting to realize it has a mortal body because it feels hungry, it feels cold, it feels tired, but still believes that everything in its environment is a part of it. Gemini is that moment in human development when the split occurs and we suddenly realize that there's me and there's you. And the way that this sometimes happens is I like to use the example of siblings. Let's say that there's a baby holding a Barbie doll and it's sitting blissfully holding this Barbie doll, shaking it, and the sister comes in, the older sister, and she says, "Hey, that's mine." And she takes the Barbie doll. We discover that we're separate. Our brain does a series of calculations. So let's think about this for a minute, which is what the brain does. First of all, there's me and you. Secondly, something I value can be taken by you. Sometimes you might have something that I need. So I need to learn how to communicate with you. I need to make sound. I need to do action. I need to learn judgment. I need to learn that there are some things I like and some things I don't like. And this creates polarity. Polarity oftentimes is something that we want to escape kind of in this new age paradigm, but polarity was absolutely necessary for us to learn how to cope with being alive. Polarity is what tells us that it doesn't taste good to eat dog poop, but it does taste good to eat apples. That's judgment, and that keeps us alive. It keeps us from getting sick, it keeps us it helps us to grow. And so discernment and judgment happens in the brain during the time of Gemini. We decide we don't like apples, but we do like cherries. We don't like it when our sister takes these things. We do like it when our mom holds us. This is part of Gemini's energy. And as we get older in adulthood, we see Gemini in the learning process, in learning how to communicate more fully, learning how to read and write, because communication ensures that the things that we value, we can bring to ourselves or cultivate for ourselves. But going back to the baby and the plant, when we move into the new cycle of Cardinal Water, so this is the beginning of a new cycle, the beginning of the summer cycle. Cardinal Water is defined by the sign of Cancer, and it's the moment when the plant has taken some root, but it's still very vulnerable, and it has to endure the cycles. It has to endure equal day and night. It has to endure the changing of the seasons. And in child development, Cancer energy occurs directly after the realization that the separation has taken place. When that baby gets that Barbie doll snatched from its hand, after a split second of brain activity, emotion occurs. Cardinal emotion, very pronounced emotion, usually screaming and crying. And that screaming and crying is a very deep wound. It's deeper than we think. It's not just having something taken, it's realizing that we're no longer connected to all that is. We are now human beings living in a separate container, and we are not our neighbors, we are not our mothers, we are not our brothers and sisters, we are not one with God and everything that is. It's a perception that we have by being alive. It may not be true on a spiritual level, but on a very physical level, we're very much separate. What we do with that emotional feeling is very, very important. The reason why Cancer is oftentimes associated with the mother and with nurturing is because when that baby feels that heartbreak of separation and the crying occurs, we would love nothing more than our mother to scoop us up and say, oh baby, living on the earth can be hard. It can be painful. Sad things can happen to you. You could get hurt. But no matter what, I love you. I love you no matter what, and I will always nurture you, and you'll always be safe at our home in my arms. And when a baby feels safe and nurtured by their mother or their caregiver or their father, some kind of power larger than itself, it will feel vulnerable, but okay with that. Oftentimes, we don't get the kind of nurturing that we need as little baby souls, and no matter how attentive you are as a parent or a caregiver, you can't possibly give a baby the kind of feeling that it's striving for of being back in the womb. So there will always be a level of pain there. And as a person ages and becomes an adult, we hope that that pain drives the roots of that person's soul deeper into the earth. We hope that that soul connects to the earth more and sees the earth as its mother and sees its place, sees this higher power outside of itself as its faith in something larger. And that's the true drive of Cancer energy, but we learn that first from our parents. And so this house, this fourth house of Cancer, is really where we look to see how we cope with vulnerability, emotional pain, nurturing from others, nurturing of ourselves. So moving forward in our plant's development, as we move into Leo, which is fixed fire, we see the plant growing into its adolescence. It's coming into a type of maturity. It's stretching its roots deeper into the earth, and it's also reaching up to the sky in a very strong, stretching growth period. And during the time of Leo, it's hot every single day. And it's really hard to do much of anything but play out in the sprinklers naked and make mud pies. And in the case of the child development, if that baby feels safe enough and nurtured enough and knows that no matter what, its home will be there, the baby will feel safe to go out and play. And it will play hard. It will play and make a big mess. It'll make the mud pies, and it'll have the lizard king and the little plant of castles, and go into a full imaginary world where it creates its whole reality based on what that person's perspective of fun and living is. And so during Leo, we see a lot of growth and play and imagination, creativity, expression, and it's very much expression of the uniqueness of that soul. That is a very, very important part of our soul's evolution that without appropriate nurturing, we may not always feel safe to do. But if we do, we play really hard, we're going to work up an appetite. And we're going to, in the case of the tree, we're going to continue digging our roots deeper and deeper and deeper and building our leaves fuller and fuller and fuller. In the form of plant development, and as far as the cycles are concerned, a plant will reach its fullness and its most maturity in the time of Virgo, in this mutable earth time. In development, this is a time when the baby's played hard and gotten nice and dirty, and the mom says, all right, it's time to come in and have dinner. Let's get cleaned up. Grandma's coming to dinner, or dad's coming home, or the dad's like, I made you guys some hot dogs and come on in. If the baby played hard enough, the baby will run in to take a bath, will run in to get ready for grandma to come to dinner. Virgo is that time where all the taking the bath, the cutting the fingernails, the getting dressed and brushing the hair, setting the table, making the dinner, doing all the preparation for some kind of union, some kind of celebration that we'll share with other people. In order to share that celebration, that preparation is very, very important. And this plant, this tree, is preparing itself to bloom. It's preparing itself for flowers. And so it's done all of its prep work. It can stand alone, hardy, all by itself. Virgo is a time when the soul is complete unto itself. The ancient, Virgo is related to virgin, but the original meaning of virgin was a person who is complete unto herself, who's owned by no one. And that is how we see Virgo. Virgo is the way that we pay our bills. It's the way we keep our house clean, the way we do our laundry so that we have clothes to wear. It's all of that daily maintenance of ourselves so that we can stand on our own 2 feet. And the value of standing on your own 2 feet is that we can start a whole new cycle. And the cycle begins with cardinal air, Libra. Libra is when the plant begins to produce flowers. And Libra is the time when we as people welcome people into our world. The plant produces flowers to attract. It wants to attract relationship with plants and other plants and animals and insects. It wants to use its charm and beauty and fragrance to please others and to bring them into their world. And so Libra is also associated with relationship. It's associated with friendships and romantic relationships. When a tree or a person stands on their own 2 feet, they're completely capable of being open, present, and authentic with the people that show up in their lives, and they can form trusting and lasting relationships that way. The interesting thing is, once we enter the top half of this chart, we start to recognize the polarities here. In order for a plant to flower, and in order for a person to be present and authentic with another person, they have to know who they are in the first place. They really have to understand their unique identity so that when they're meeting others, they know that they have a unique identity as well. They're not just projecting the pieces that they're not sure about themselves onto another. And knowing who you are can create balance in your relationships and let people be who they are, which cultivates trust. When you cultivate trust, you can move into Scorpio with grace. Scorpio is fixed water. Fixed water is a time of deep fertilization and incubation and transition. In the plant's development, the flowers appear to die and something new is being born. And Scorpio is a time of death and rebirth. In a kind of anecdotal way, Scorpio would be the time that we, in Libra, let's say we meet someone and we communicate with them. We use our cardinal air mind to communicate and ask questions and build trust. That trust creates partnership, and the partnership is something that is a relationship that will allow us to go deeper. And I use the story of deep sea diving. Let's say you wanted to go into a deep underwater cave. You would want to make sure that the person you went with had all of their gear, all of their licenses, all of their stuff double checked and ready. And you'd want yourself to be ready as well. You want to have complete trust in that person. And you want to know that when you get down there, if something does go wrong, that person's not going to freak out. They're going to be able to support that emergency or that crisis of soul awareness or whatever. And if that person can hold space for you when you're in that moment of like terror or fear or vulnerability, it cultivates more trust, and you guys are able to actually go deeper and deeper and deeper and continue your dives. That is the perfect environment for Scorpio depth to be taken. Oftentimes, we have a really hard time trusting another enough to be vulnerable with them, especially if we're not really sure what we even need ourselves or what we value. If we're trying to partner with someone to fulfill a hole that we have inside of ourselves, or fulfill something that we're unsure of about our existence or our purpose, then when it's time to go deep sea diving, we may not be prepared for what they end up bringing to the table, and we may be afraid that when they see what we are, we might feel rejection. And so Scorpio and fixed water is definitely a time of vulnerability and trust on a very deep and intimate level. But if that can occur, great fertilization and rebirth can occur in the soul. And it's able to come into ripeness. So this, let's say you guys did go really deep into a cave and you found something incredible. You found some amazing, beautiful artifact. Sagittarius would be the time that you allow that artifact to completely shift your philosophies. You're going to expand your mind. And in the fruit is going to expand into ripeness and fullness on the tree and create something really juicy and valuable. Sagittarius is the house where we look to our bigger philosophies, our higher ideals, the potential of our greatest potential, our greatest truth, the deepest inner knowing. And from the place of inner knowing, we burst into joy because we've discovered that amazing thing. Usually that occurs when we've shared space with another and when we've trusted another enough to allow those original thoughts that we had about the world over in Gemini, the original ways we related to people, the original coping mechanisms we had for living on the earth, we allow them to pass and die so that these new, bigger ideas and growth can occur. Or maybe we just add on to what we already know. It would be pulling artifacts out of the deep waters and bringing them to the surface. Aha, this is going to change everything. When we pull those up and our fruit comes into ripeness, we have an opportunity in Capricorn, or the 10th house, to share what we've learned with others. So this is the moment where we pull the fruit from the tree and we begin to give it to others. Capricorn is cardinal earth, and it's building something based on the new philosophies that we've discovered. This is the spiritual center that you build in the real world. This is the website that you build to let people know about your philosophies. This is how you interface what you actually build in the world to interface with the others, with the people that are existing with us. And it's a really important time. It's a really important factor. So many of us are not sharing our deepest purpose with others, usually because of some kind of wounding that's happened down in this area. If we don't feel nurtured enough, if we never felt safe enough to go out and play, then how are we going to create something real in the world that we can share with others? How are we going to feel safe that if we share that, our brothers and sisters won't take it from us or hurt us or laugh at us or judge us? We have to have a lot of faith in our security with ourselves and the earth and our connection in order to really put ourselves out there in a very Capricorn sort of way to share what we know. But if we do have an opportunity to share what we know, we can move into Aquarian energy. This is fixed air, and it's kind of fixed air would say something about a thought not changing, a thought being fixed, or ideas being fixed. And that is the case. Aquarian energy is pushing the collective's consciousness, which is usually at a fixed level, pushing it larger and larger. So an example of that would be, at a certain point, everyone on the earth thought the earth was flat. That was a fixed belief that we had. It took a very strong and certain person to begin sharing the proof of what they discovered, and that the world is in fact round. And the entire world did not believe them at first. He was imprisoned, and it took a little bit more evidence and more people proving it in order for that fixed paradigm to expand to believe that the earth is indeed round. And we're in a time of rapid expansion as a collective right now. What is true is growing and growing and growing and growing. And the reason why is because more and more people are working their process, they're learning their truths, and they're sharing them with others. And so it's every single person has something special to learn about themselves. They have something special to discover with another person and to share in their world that can shift the paradigm. And each person doing that is bringing the entire collective closer and closer and closer, even though it's expanding, expanding, expanding. Energy is like a Taurus. The more it expands, the more it actually folds into itself. And so what this entire process has done is started from a little tiny seed, expanded out as wide as it could go, and then made its trek from the outside of the torus back toward the center, through other people, through the bridge of others. This is the bridge to uniqueness and oneness and whole and complete unto itself. And this is the bridge through the other back into the truth that we're all one. Pisces is that wisdom that we all are sharing the same center heart space. We all are sharing that central seed of becoming. And the entire evolution of a soul and through the cycle will bring all of us back into the awareness that we are all brothers and sisters. We're all toes on the same foot. We're all cells of a body on one body. And that's Piscean energy, and that's that realization that the seed holds the potential for the entire everything. And so this cycle continues. We're not all back to oneness, but slowly but surely, each person awakening, learning who they truly are and what they value, learning to maneuver and communicate, learning to navigate their emotions, learning to express themselves uniquely and creatively, learning to stand on their own 2 feet and be complete, learning how to relate in a healthy, balanced way with others in right relationship, learning to go deeper into the esoteric, deeper into their soul, learning to bring that wisdom up to the surface to share with others, doing the work to actually get the word out, to actually affect our brothers and sisters, and then shifting the paradigm on a larger and larger scale. Every one of us doing that is bringing us closer and closer to oneness consciousness. It's just a process, and it's one that I'm dedicated to.